I am such an awesome guy. I make so many videos.
Hello there, Price of Reason here with a series review. For a while now, the cast and crew of the Quantum Leap sequel series have been promising that the Season 1 finale will bring this entire season to a very satisfying close. Well, now that I've seen this episode, one thing is very clear. Showrunner Martin Giro has absolutely 100% failed to deliver on his promise. Episode 18 starts with Ben arriving in the year 2051, only to find an older, random office guy person who explains to him that years ago, the government held the Quantum Leap program responsible for a nuclear apocalypse. As a result, they sent the mystery box Leaper to undo their work by killing Ben's disappointed fiancée, who was supposed to be the original Leaper. That's why random office guy person had leaped into a drag queen, so that he could warn Ben, who then took his disappointed fiancée's place as the Leaper. By doing this, Ben changed history. As a result, the mystery box Leaper wanted to go undo what the project did, and then ultimately show up in 2018 to kill her. Random office guy person pulls Ben into the future to give him a secret code, which Ben takes with him back to 2018. In 2018, Ben leaps into himself as he has to go out on a date with his not yet disappointed fiancée. Meanwhile, he also has to stop the mystery box Leaper, who's leaped into magic and wants to kill Ben's not yet disappointed fiancée. After a bunch of ridiculous nonsense happens, Ben and the mystery box Leaper enter the accelerator and start jumping through time to different places they've already been. Just as it seems as though Ben is about to get killed in 1879, the bartender girl boss we met in that episode conveniently shows up and guns down the mystery box Leaper. Now that the mystery box Leaper is dead, random office guy person discovers that the code he gave Ben in the future helps connect all of the different versions of himself into one version, and then he sends Ben to the beginning of the same day in 2018 where he kisses his disappointed fiancée and then leaps. In present day, the crew is now sure that Ben is about to leap back, but as they look into the Quantum Leap accelerator, it looks like something went wrong. Then, the episode ends. Now, I know that some people may have enjoyed the season finale, and that's perfectly fine, but for me, this has to be one of the worst hours of television I've seen in years. In order to be fair, I will try my best to talk about a few things that I did like about this episode, although saying I like anything here is really a bit of a stretch. Number 1, self-leap. The idea of leaping into a past version of yourself is cool. It was one of the highlights of the original series. Unfortunately, while the new version tries to use the same idea, as usual, the execution and setup are extremely poor, and we will get to that shortly. Number 2, Ben is less of a loser. There is a mild attempt here to make Ben a bit more heroic this time around. While he's still a bit of a loser at times, he at least has a bit more agency and conviction this time. For example, even though the mystery box Leaper is a physically stronger opponent, Ben still tries to go up against him and even lands a few punches. Number 3, Raymond Lee. As an actor, he gives his best here, and while I still don't believe Lee's best is good enough for this type of role, this was probably one of his best performances to date. Unfortunately, even though Lee undoubtedly brought what would probably be considered his A game, this episode was so atrocious overall that it pretty much doesn't even matter. Well, that was the good. Now let's talk about the bad. Number 1, the writing. Honestly, the writing in this episode is so bad that I could probably do a whole separate hour-long video just focusing on that. Instead, though, I will just go over some key points, such as, why did the government think that the Quantum Leap caused a nuclear apocalypse? Didn't we deserve a bit more of an explanation about it? Without any kind of context, how can we tell if the government was right or wrong? If random office guy person had access to a time machine, why did he leap into a drag queen in 2022? Shouldn't he have tried to stop the apocalypse from ever happening? And if he did leap into a drag queen in 2022, couldn't he have advised Ben to kill the 2022 version of the mystery box Leaper so that he never tries to kill his disappointed fiancée in the first place? Also, a futuristic random office guy person knew Ben's disappointed fiancée dies in 2018. Wouldn't he have had to warn Ben in 2017 prior to her death? Also, if she was supposedly killed in 2018, in the new timeline, how was she still alive when the series started? As I've said before on this channel, time travel can be difficult to write because if there aren't any clear rules as to how a show's logic works, then nothing really makes much sense. And when you're writing a time travel show with almost no planning at all, like showrunner Martin Giro and his team, you are left with a massive amount of plot holes and inconsistencies. The original show kept things simple, and while it did require the viewer to suspend disbelief and overlook some occasional issues, it was relatively consistent with its rules. This new show's frantic and desperate attempt at tying loose ends in the finale is so awful, it only exposes all the issues this show has, even if the showrunner has tried to mask its failure, which brings me to my next point. Number 2. IP rating. It's already well established that this entire season Martin Giro and his team did a terrible job at telling any kind of cohesive seasonal story. Just a bunch of ongoing mystery boxes that usually mostly lead to nowhere. But since they wanted to seemingly end the season on a high note, they ended up taking ideas from other IPs in hopes Quantum Leap viewers wouldn't notice. Unfortunately for them though, I did notice, so much so that just in my last video, I had actually mentioned that Martin Giro was trying to use this very tactic. Let's go to the videotape. I almost feel like the showrunners are suddenly trying to turn this show into the 12 Monkeys series. And for any of you naysayers out there, after my video came out, Martin Giro actually said in an interview that he used 12 Monkeys as a reference point. That's why we got the futuristic apocalypse idea and random office guy person in different timelines connecting as one being. Basically, in 12 Monkeys series terms, Giro turned random office guy person into what's called a primary. The problem is, in the 12 Monkeys series, they actually spend several episodes on building this idea. Jennifer Goines writes all these codes on the wall in a mental institution and doesn't initially know what it all means. Over time, it becomes clear what it means and she understands what it means to be a primary. And it isn't just out of left field like we see here. In addition, if Janice talking about a time paradox sounds familiar to you, it's because Giro said that he was a fan of Back to the Future too. Now, I'm not saying that such a concept couldn't be introduced on Quantum Leap, but I don't understand why Giro has to constantly raid other IPs when he doesn't even fully understand the very IP that he's been put in charge of. Both 12 Monkeys and Back to the Future have very different premises than Quantum Leap, and Giro shouldn't be looking at them to try to save his show's poor storytelling. Not to mention that in both of those other IPs, a person is physically transported to a different time, not just his aura or spirit like on Quantum Leap. You can't just produce crap for an entire season and then just say, hey, let's change the DNA of this entire IP in 1 second because I'm out of ideas and I really prefer those other IPs. Nobody asked you what you prefer, Marty. You can't just suddenly identify as the showrunner of 12 Monkeys because you feel like it. You had a very clear assignment, and since you don't have the skills or capability to reasonably execute your assignment, you decided to try and fudge it. Again. Number 3. Quick pace con. These days, when a showrunner like Giro doesn't know what he's doing, he resorts to another tactic to try to fool the audience. If the writing is poor and nothing makes sense, make everything on screen happen very fast so that viewers won't have much time to think about it. When Ben arrives in the future apocalypse, random office guy person has a ton of exposition plot holes and plot sheets to give him, and it all has to happen very quickly and at a rapid pace. Ben has to accept everything immediately and disappear before viewers realize that Giro is a hack. Same with all of the events of this episode. Every 5 minutes there's a different hologram and a different situation and a different scene. Very convenient plot points just randomly resolve themselves every second, and before you can focus on one plot hole, another one immediately presents itself. For example, why did Ben have to kiss his disappointed fiancée on that morning of 2018 in order to leap? And why would Mystery Box Leaper no longer be a threat? If the Mystery Box Leaper is in Magic's body, and now he's dead, isn't Magic dead now too? So how is he standing there in present day? Why does Mystery Box Leaper dying in 1879 solve all of Ben's problems all of a sudden? Also, the Mystery Box Leaper was supposedly going back in time to put wrong what once went right in other leaps, but we never really see that happening on this show. Why did we only meet the Mystery Box Leaper in 3 leaps and not more? If Janice knew that Ben would end up in 2018 in this situation, why didn't she share her plan with the rest of the team in advance? If future random office guy person was able to leap into 2022 to warn somebody, why did he choose Ben? Shouldn't he have notified Magic, his boss and the supposed leader of the entire operation? And these are just a few questions. There's probably about 100 more. But as I said, if you really think about everything you're looking at on screen, none of it makes sense. And when I say it doesn't make sense, I don't mean that it's science fiction and it's not plausible that it would happen in real life. I mean that based on the rules of this show, it doesn't make any sense, and it just seems like the showrunners didn't know how to end the season, and they're trying to fool you. And personally, I don't like that. I find that annoying. I can't critically look at this and just ignore everything that's being done here. And for me, I just feel this is very manipulative and even insulting to longtime fans. Number 4, no impact. On the original show, when Sam leaps into a young Al and makes a mistake, Al disappears from existence and Sam suddenly has a completely different hologram. And while admittedly that specific episode of the original show does have some issues, it at least makes a minimal effort to show that Sam's actions could have real consequences. Even the 12 Monkeys show, which Jiro is ripping off, often acknowledges that timelines have changed and that it's influenced people's lives and events around them. It may not be perfect on that show either, but at least there's an attempt. In this show, Ben's talking to past and present versions of his colleagues simultaneously, and nothing is affected. Number 5, Magic Bench. Why is Magic sitting on a bench? He's a hologram, so he can't use the bench in the same way Ben does. Again, this could seem like a minor point, but the whole episode just ignores every single rule about this show, and this is just another example of how lazy the writing is, even when it comes to the most simple and minor details. Number 6, aging. Earlier this season, in episode 5, where the mystery box leaper is introduced, he looks young and has black hair, similar to where we see him in present day. It is only during the Stinky battleship episode that he suddenly has a bit of gray hair, because Jiro wanted to make it seem like he's decades older, even though he doesn't even look like it. It's almost as if Jiro was flying by the seat of his pants the whole season, without any kind of plan, and then he pivoted last minute after trying to steal ideas from the 12 Monkeys series. Number 7, member berries. Remember Al? Remember how Al likes cigars? You like Al, right? And that's why you have to like this episode, right? Number 8, jump the shark. In many ways, this episode jumps the shark in every possible way, ignoring its own rules and world at every step, just so that Jiro could pretend to have come up with some cool-looking resolution. The problem is, if all the rules don't mean anything, and any development is considered legitimate on this show, no matter how dumb, where do we go from here? How can we take any stakes here seriously moving forward? So, as bad as this show was, after this episode, I would argue that it's now even worse. Number 9, failed rehash. There's a scene in this episode that really demonstrates just what a big hack Martin Jiro is. When Ben is visited by magic, Jiro tries to recreate the scene from A Leap Home from the original show. In that episode, Sam leaps into a younger version of himself, and he tries to help his own family. He warns his father about his future health problems, his sister about her future abusive husband, and his brother about his future death in Vietnam. The problem is, nobody in Sam's family believes him, and he gets very frustrated. He asks Al why can't he help his family after helping so many other people. At that moment, Al gives Sam a very powerful and grounded response. He says that most people would give anything to spend time with relatives that they've already lost, even for a day. Not only is this one of the best scenes of that specific episode, it's probably one of the best scenes in the entire original series, but that's because there was real emotional buildup for it over the course of previous episodes, and specifically in this one. In contrast, in this new episode, similarly to Sam, Ben asks Magic why after helping people, he can't save his not yet disappointed fiancée, but the scene feels like it was just copied and pasted into the episode, and within a few seconds, Magic just delivers some stupid plot device and leaves. Martin Jiro wants to have the type of payoffs the original show had, but he's just not willing or capable of creating any of the proper setups. Again! Now, I could go on and on about how awful this episode is, but I would probably need to create several videos to do so, and at the end of the day, it's just not worth it. After one season of this so-called sequel series, all I can say is that this show is a cheap, lazy, steaming pile of shit led by a producer who is both incompetent and, in my opinion, a creative con man. What did you think about the season 1 finale of Quantum Leap? Did you love it? Feel free to let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to my channel, and also clicking on that wonderful notification bell. Thanks for watching, my friends. Thank you, and good day.
I am such an awesome guy. I make so many videos. From